I got to tell you briefly about the next speaker. Why the next speaker is here. I did not really know any of Gary's work. I have a subscription to the 3 major magazines. If you guys are truly into this and don't subscribe to these magazines, I don't understand why. One of them, we have the publisher as the speaker after lunch, Ancient American. If you like a magazine with no frills, that's it. Nothing but information. Wonderful magazine. The other one's called Atlantis Rising, and it covers everything from metaphysical, archaeology. Very good magazine. The other is World Explorer, and it's like a fun magazine. It has some very good stuff in it, a lot of fun, comics. It's got a little bit of everything. Well, I was going to renew my subscription. You had a choice of 4 books. And the most interesting book was called Eye of the Phoenix, from the author, Gary David. So, oh my gosh, I'll get that book. Well, it tells you the power of that book. The author of that book is here because it was that amazing. The Southwest stuff, that's what his presentation is going to be telling you. But I just wanted to tell you that's what the power of a book can be. I guess the power of a movie, power of anything. So basically, I will let Gary have the floor. Gary David.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for the great conference you're putting on. We appreciate that and all the great speakers you're bringing here. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but I've lived most of my adult life in the Southwest, in Arizona, New Mexico, that area. And I'd like to talk about the Hopi in particular, the Hopi star correlations of the desert Southwest. The major theme of my presentation is as above, so below. That's the Hermetic maxim that the Egyptian saying that the sky and the earth mirror each other. The major subject of my presentation is star correlations of the Southwest. The Orion, I'm going to feature Orion mainly in my talk. There's a nice picture of Orion, the belt stars of Orion right there. The American Southwest, we're all familiar with that iconic landscape. John Ford made a number of movies in the American Southwest in Arizona. That's Monument Valley, Fort Apache. You see Henry Fonda and John Wayne standing there. Of course, the Apache leader Cochise was actually played by a Hispanic, not a Native American. You know, so Hollywood has some odd ideas of what American Indians are. There's Chuck Connors in 1962 playing Geronimo, the famous Apache war chief. At the same time, he was also starring in the Riflemen's series, TV series. So he was both a cowboy and an Indian at the same time. But I want to talk about real Indians. I took this shot a number of years ago at Santo Domingo Pueblo in New Mexico. I especially want to dwell on the Hopi in northern Arizona. The Hopi snake priests in this shot here. They put live rattlesnakes in their mouth, you know, do dances with them. Here's some historic photo by Edward Curtis. He did some nice work with a number of different tribes in the Southwest. Here's your average Hopi Indian, and it's quite unlike the stereotype of the paint and war feathers Indian. Here's grandfather Martin Gesh Wesioma. He's of the Fire Clan in a village called Hope Villa. He's the caretaker of This rock here is a petroglyph. It's called Prophecy Rock. It's quite a famous petroglyph. He's about 90 years old. Here's me with Grandfather Martin in front of Prophecy Rock a few years ago. He explained the meaning of the rock. I'm not going to get into Prophecy Rock today. That's a whole other subject. The Hopi prophecy is very prevalent. But the ancient Hopi were superb sky watchers. This particular pictograph, which is a painting instead of a rock carving, it looks to me like there are spirits walking across the Milky Way, and a snake glyph here, and more snake glyphs here, and different figures, very colorful rock painting that the ancestral Hopi created. And this is near the town of Sedona. Many of you are familiar with Sedona, Arizona, and its magnificent beauty. At the same site here in Sedona, here's a depiction of the 1054 AD supernova, which was very important right here, a crescent moon and the supernova itself. And you see the same thing in New Mexico, the same depiction of this supernova that happened in July of 1054. Here again, a very colorful star wheel or sun wheel, and some kind of tall human figure. And the ancient people were interested in archaeoastronomy. Archaeoastronomy is the sacred star knowledge. It's the way the ancient people viewed the heavens. When they looked up into the sky, they saw celestial gods, they saw stargates, and they saw a unified cosmology where the terrestrial and the celestial mirrored each other. And that's, some say this is the star Venus. For the Hopi, the most important constellation is the constellation Orion. And they call it Hotamkam, which means beads on a string. We think of Orion as that winter constellation, the hunter. For the Hopi, it synchronizes their winter solstice ceremony, which is called the Soyal. And they're sitting in an underground prayer chamber called a kiva, and they're waiting for Orion to appear in the overhead hatchway. And that's the time that this winter solstice ceremony will start, when they see the belt stars of Orion in the overhead hatchway of the kiva. And of course, here's the kiva. It's a communal prayer chamber, subterranean, and you could get through with the ladder through the hatchway there, down through the ladder. Here's another kiva in New Mexico. It's a round kiva, and the ladder's sticking up out of it. It's in the middle of the village plaza there, San Ildefonso. Here's one on the Hopi mesas, and the Hopi make their kivas rectangular. They're the rectangular shape rather than the round shape, but the function is still the same. Now, I'm going to talk about star correlation. What is a star correlation? We see Robert Bauval looking rather professorial with his pipe. He's standing in front of the Great Pyramid over here. And he devised or created this Orion correlation theory. And his book, The Orion Mystery, basically says that the pyramids at Giza, here are the three major pyramids, that's the Great Pyramid right there, correspond to the belt stars of Orion. And for the ancient Egyptians, Orion meant Osiris. And of course, we see the Nile River, and this is going flowing from the south to the north. Okay, so this is pointed south, and we have the Milky Way and the Nile River corresponding to each other in this whole cosmology. And you have the three pyramids here and the three stars. Here's an overhead view of the pyramids and the three stars right here. But I was reading this book, The Orion Mystery. It was 1997. The book was out for a few years, and I was going up to a Kachina dance on the Hopi Reservation in northern Arizona. Of course, you can't film Kachina dances anymore. The Kachinas are basically spirit messengers. They're sort of like angels. They're intermediaries between the realm of the gods and the realm of the humans. And the Hopi still perform these masked dances in the village plaza, really starting in the spring or the early summer, and there are hundreds of types of masks that these Kachinas wear. Here's a couple Kachina dolls that they carved to teach the children what these different spirits are. Okay, these two come at the winter solstice ceremony, really. So this is one of the first Kachina dances of the year, and these two creatures come. But there are so many different types of Kachina masks. They can be circular or dome-shaped, or cylindrical, or you can have horns sticking out, or feathers, or bug-eyed. You know, there are the multitude of variations in a Kachina mask are really stunning. And the men wear these masks and dance all day long in the sun, which is quite a feat to when you think about dancing in the Arizona sun all day long with these masks. And they dance in a circle to usually a single cottonwood drum. Now, the Hopi Reservation is located, as I say, in northern Arizona. There are three primary mesas, first, second, and third mesas, where the Hopi created their society, built a number of stone pueblos, or villages, on these mesas. And they started building them in about 1100 AD. Now, these Kachinas moved back and forth between the Hopi mesas up here and the San Francisco Peaks, which are the highest point in Arizona. So after the winter solstice, the Kachinas move from the San Francisco Peaks, where they live during the winter, and they move out to the Hopi Mesas, where they assist in the agricultural growth, planting of corn and planting of beans and squash. And then after the corn gets going really well, in July, they have what's called the homecoming dance, or the Neman dance. And the Kachinas have a final dance on the Hopi Mesas, and then they return to the San Francisco Peaks and live half the year there. So there's a cycle between living in the mountains and living on the mesas. There's the San Francisco Peaks here. And I call them the Great Pyramids of Arizona because they kind of look like these three pyramids on the Giza Plateau. And they're very similar in shape. And there was a grave slab discovered that had the same effect, these three pyramids. And there are birds on top of these, they're parrots, okay? And parrots, of course, don't live in Arizona, they live in the jungles of Mesoamerica. So, you know, there was a great influx between southern Mexico and Central America and Arizona. And there have been parrots found, macaws and parrots found buried in northern Arizona, in the graves of northern Arizona. So there's quite a trade between the Maya territory and the Hopi. But I also noticed there was a similarity between the Egyptian Bennu bird sitting atop this pyramid-shaped object and these parrots here. So there are similarities between the Egyptian society and the Hopi culture. Now, as I said, I was going up to this Kachina dance, I believe it was in May, and I was looking up towards the Hopi Mesas. Here's a map you can see a little better. The first, second, and third mesa. And I was wondering, you know, I just read Robert Duvall's book, The Orion Mystery. I thought, well, you know, maybe there's a an Orion correlation right here in Arizona. Not just in Egypt, but maybe right here. And I went to the dances and put that in the back of my mind, and then I got home and I found, got out my map of Arizona and got out a sky chart. And this is what I found. There was a Hopi ruin or village corresponding to each major star in the constellation Orion. And the correlation was uncanny. Of course, Orion is reversed just the way it is on the Giza Plateau. The correlation is pointed, well, Giza is pointed to the southeast, here it's pointed to the southwest, this axis here. But, the sky to Earth correlation was simply amazing to me. So that got me started to research each one of these sites. Here's a Google Earth shot. It's about a little over 100 miles between here, this site here, and this site here. And I'll go through these different sites briefly. You can see Black Mesa here, north of the three primary mesas where the Hopi have settled. So it's quite a stunning correlation. A number of ruin sites. I'll go into some of these, not all of these. So this is basically the template of Orion projected on the desert. Here are the three mesas. They correspond to Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka in the belt stars. And by the way, the word zona, as in Arizona, literally means the belt stars of Orion. This is the way we see Orion in the northern hemisphere. This is the way it's projected on the Earth. And as I say, it's the same way at the Giza Plateau. But why would the Hopi build these places so far away from sources of water? The nearest river is about 50 miles away. They've relied on intermittent springs. That's on First Mesa. The Hopi considered this as the center of the world, Tuwanasabi, they call it. And it corresponds to these three belt stars, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. You can see the belt stars here, and the three mesas here. Perhaps they were getting celestial information from ancient spirit teachers or celestial ancestors that came to the Hopi Mesas. Here's an aerial view of First Mesa, and there are three villages: Walpi, Sochomabi, and Hanu on the First Mesa. Here's another shot of Walpi. A nice picture of Walpi. Here's a satellite view of on Second Mesa of Shangopovi, and that corresponds to the middle belt star, Alnilam. Here's a shot of another village on Second Mesa, Mashangovi, up here. This is called Corn Rock, where it's kind of a burial ground. Third Mesa, the village of Arabia is the oldest continuously inhabited village in the North American continent. It was started about 1100 AD, and people still live there. I like this picture because this guy is looking at the photographer and saying, just go away. The Hopi are very reclusive people. They like to be by themselves to perform their ceremonies. So, he looks like a rather ominous creature crawling down into his kiva, saying, go away, you photographer. We don't want your ways around here. Okay, I'll go through the other sites in this Orion correlation. Here's a beautiful site called Canyon de Chelly. It corresponds to the star Scythe in Orion, the right foot of Orion. And as you see, it's very, very deep and straight drop off. Here's a little van down parked at the bottom, so you can see. Here's the ruin site right here, so you can get a sense of scale in that particular picture. Also, when I was taking that picture, I was standing on the opposite rim right here, and I had a tripod, and a kind of a gust of wind kind of blew at me and almost blew me over. So I got a little farther from the edge just to protect myself. Here's another shot of basically the same area. It's an offshoot canyon, Canyon del Muerto, another ruin site, a cliff dwelling. Here's White House ruin in Canyon de Chelly. There's some cliff houses up here and some at the bottom as well. And these were started about 1050 AD. And if we go to the northwest, to this site that corresponds to the left foot of Orion, Rigel, we see these immense, beautiful alcoves here that protect these dwellings. And these were built a little later in about 1250 AD. And has a nice painting, rock painting again, of a god that named Masao, which I'll get into in just a little bit. It's an important Hopi god. Here's another site, related site, close to, the site is called Batatican. I forgot to say that. It's in Navajo National Monument. And you can go see these, and you can go walk into these places. And this is quite a well-preserved one. Okay, if we go from here, we were up here, and if you go a little over 100 miles to the south, due south, there's a place called Anomalies, and it corresponds to Betelgeuse, the right shoulder of Orion. There's a rectangular kiva at Anomalies. Not much is left of these walls. So some are in better shape than others. And it was a huge ruin site. It had over 1,000 rooms. Okay, if we go up here, from here we were here, and then if we go up here to Wupatki, corresponds to Bellatrix, the left shoulder of this is north of Flagstaff. If you've been to Arizona, you know Flagstaff. It's a beautiful ruin situated in the very desert, beautiful desert, red rock area. Here's an amphitheater that is built. Here's a ball court. I'll show you the ball court a little better. This ball court is the northernmost ball court on the North American continent. So this tradition goes all the way from north of Flagstaff, Arizona, down into the Maya territory of Yucatan. So this tradition was imported from the Maya territory. And it's adjacent to this blowhole that blows cool air in the summertime out, and it's really a nice place to play ball. I would have imagined, you have this air conditioner blowing out of the earth at various times of the year. Okay, the head of Orion corresponds to Misa, which is a site, let's see, east of Flagstaff. Here's Flagstaff, so it's almost in Flagstaff. And they're kind of like swallow nests tucked under cliffs. So you have small ruins all along this cliffside. Okay, the Hopi oriented their sights not only to the stars, but also to the sun. The yellow lines that I've marked here are solstice lines. Now, a solstice line is comprised of a viewer observing a point on the horizon. Okay, it's either a winter solstice or summer solstice, sunrise or sunset point. So there are a number of points that they took into account as far as their agricultural calendar. This is how they kept the time, by where the sun rose and set on the horizon during the time of the year. Of course, In the summertime, the sun moves edges a little bit north. It rises a little bit north on the horizon every day until you get to the summer solstice, and then it starts moving back. And the equinoxes are due east and due west. And this explains it a little better, because for the Hopi it was very important because they had to keep their agriculture going. This is, again, due east and due west here. And at this particular latitude, only 35 and 36 degrees latitude, you more or less have a perfect hexagon. The summer solstice sunrise rises at 60 degrees. The winter solstice sunrise is at 120 degrees azimuth. Azimuth is simply the degrees measured from true north clockwise. So you have east is 90, and south is 180, west would be 270. So the Hopi kept track, the ancient Hopi kept track of all this, and they still do. They still watch the horizon. They're called sun watchers. Okay, I noticed during the course of my research that there is a chakra line. I call this the chakra of Orion because there are a number of villages located along this line. There's about a dozen villages located, and this goes all the way to the mouth of the Colorado River, this particular line. And the Hopi did have a system of chakras. They used 5 different chakras rather than the normal 7 we like to think of from the Indian, the Hindu system of chakras. So, very briefly, going up to Mesa Verde in southwestern Colorado, here's the base chakra. The sacral chakra is a place called Burnt Horn Ruins on Black Mesa. The solar plexus chakra is this middle belt star, the second mesa right there. The heart chakra is a place called Kachina Point. It's a mesa right there. The throat chakra is Grand Falls along the Little Colorado River. The third eye chakra, the pineal gland, is located at Walnut Canyon, which I just showed you a picture of. And the crown chakra is located in the Verde Valley, a place called Tuzigoot. So this is unified, this whole system is unified by this chakra system going this way. Here's a shot looking the other direction from, this is Colorado here, the southwestern Colorado, looking this way towards the Verde Valley and Tuzigoot. The most important, I think the most important solstice point, however, is this point between Wupake Ruins and Third Mesa. So, for instance, if you stood on the winter solstice sunset, right here on Third Mesa, the Oribe village, and look this way, the sun would be setting right over Wupake, that ruin site, and also Humphreys Peak, which is the highest point in Arizona, part of the Great Pyramids, as I call them. Here's that line around Mesa Verde. Here's it's called the Sun Temple there. It's a great cliff dwelling if you ever get into that region. And you see the crown chakra is down here at Tuzigoot. Tuzigoot, that's an overhead view of Tuzigoot. Quite a complex ruin. And this reminds me of a kind of a pyramid shape. The natural hill here gives it a kind of feeling of a Mexican pyramid to me. Of course, the star pattern can be adjusted a little bit and expanded. I found other constellations besides just the constellation Orion. Of course, here we see your Orion rising, the constellation Gemini, Auriga, Taurus. The ancient Chinese called this area the Gate of Heaven, and they thought that the Crab Nebula, the 1054 supernova I talked about before, was ushered through this particular gate. Really, it's not marked here, but the Crab Nebula was right about here, okay? And this is where it appeared in the 1054 AD. So I found other constellations corresponding to different points on the Arizona desert. You know, the Gemini, Auriga, Taurus, Orion, Canis Minor, and Canis Major, and it forms a hexagon. And here's Humphreys Peak, the San Francisco Peaks up here, where the Kachina lived during the winter. And the Hopi were very cognizant of all these constellations. I found a star map near Anomalies State Park. Here's a color picture of it, a little better. See, I put the constellations here. Oh, this represents Orion. This would be Taurus, a very clear view of Taurus. The Pleiades going off of Taurus. Here's an arc going off this way, the Milky Way. Here's Auriga, here's Gemini, Canis Minor, and Canis Major. And you can see, again, the constellations are reversed, just like the Orion correlation in Arizona is reversed. You can see a one-to-one correspondence between this particular rock art and the way the constellation appears in the sky. Also, it's a multifunctional. It also signals the summer solstice. So at noon on the summer solstice, there's a little triangle of light that goes right inside this spiral petroglyph. Okay, I talked about the Gate of Heaven that the Chinese talked about in this particular area. We have to think about as above, so below when we're talking about these ideas. Okay. The Gate of Heaven corresponds to the Phoenix Basin, or the Valley of the Sun, that area where a number of tribes lived. I want to just mention this particular expedition published in Henrietta Mertz's book, Pale Ink. Supposedly, there in the late 4th century, there was an expedition from China. I'm sorry, late 5th century, there was an expedition from China, and it landed near Los Angeles. And Hui Shan and his small group of, there were probably a dozen people, that walked 350 miles inland from LA, okay? And came to the Kingdom of Women. You know, that'd be a nice place to live, I think. And Henrietta Mertz thought this was the Mugian culture that lived during the late 5th century. It was a matriarchal culture and a matrilineal as well. He said in this particular document, the Chinese classic, he said their skin color was white, okay? And it's, through my research, I found out that the Hopi and the Zuni have very high rates of albinism. It's something like 1 in 200 people in both the Hopi and the Zuni are albinos. Okay, the normal rate is 1 in 17,000, okay, for the normal population. And I talk about this in my latest book, The Star Shrines and Earthworks of the Desert Southwest. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the albinism in the Southwest. This Chinese guy that, intrepid sailor that went across the ocean, Pacific Ocean, he said that these people, in the Kingdom of Women, lived in circular houses with entrances like burrows, and I showed a shot of the kiva before, or a pit house, which I'll show you in just a little bit. They had no written language. They believed in certain forms of prayer, and the ceremonies are continuing to this day on both Hopi and Zuni reservations. They ate a small bean or kernel, probably the pinto bean. They found copper, gold, and silver, but they only valued copper. Okay, and I don't know if you remember the map had a little CU on it that I showed a couple slides ago. The number of copper mines in Arizona is really striking. And the women took serpents for husbands. And of course, one of the first slides I showed you was the guys with the snakes in their mouths, you know, the serpent clan or the snake clan that the Hopi had. And men had human bodies with dog heads. Okay, that's what Hui Shan said. And these might be the Kachina masks he was referring to. Maybe looked like a dog. Or the Chichimex, which I'll talk about in just a minute. I just wanted to mention this very early expedition in 2250 BC, which Henrietta Mertz also talked about. It made a reference to the Luminous Canyon, which is probably Grand Canyon. So the Chinese were in the American Southwest very early. Okay, in this area known as the Gate of Heaven, which corresponds to the area of Phoenix on this template on the Arizona desert, the Hohokam culture lived, it's about a 1,000-year culture from 400 BC to 1400 AD. And the first structures they lived in were these pit houses. Okay, and this is about the middle of the span where the Chinese expedition took place, in the middle of this area of 400 AD. And as I mentioned, dog heads, there's been clay models of canines. Here's one of the guys that lived in this area at Casa Grande, Arizona. It's another site there. You notice that the Olmec wrestler, I mentioned that there was contact with Mesoamerica. The Olmecs lived in southern Mexico. There's a 400 BC statue, and it's in the same posture as this Hohokam wrestler. It's almost the exact thing found in Arizona. The Hohokam built an amazing canal system. It's amazing what they did with just, of course, no draft animals, no wheelbarrows, no wheels of any kind, just digging sticks and woven baskets on their back. And they transported so much material to build these canals. In fact, there were about 500 miles of these canals that constructed in the Phoenix Basin. And some of these canals were like 75 feet across at the top and like 12 feet deep. One of the main canals. So there was an incredible amount of work done to construct this canal system so that the Hohokam could survive in the desert of Arizona. They also had a ball court tradition, just like the ball court I showed you at Upatki. Of course, this is another tradition that stretches down into Yucatan. Here's a place called Pueblo Grande. It's right next to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. In fact, you can see the plane take off. This is a platform mound this is all transported material. Okay, it's over 12 feet high, in some places 25 feet high, and 720 cubic yards of dirt and rock were transported to make this platform mound. Well, here's the plane taking off. So next time you go into Phoenix, take a little time to go to Pueblo Grande Museum. It's a really well-produced museum. It's got a lot of artifacts, and you can walk around this area, see the adobe not stone, but adobe ruins that they built their structures with. Here's my wife standing at the other end of the, and you can see the corner here, how much, earth that they transported to build this particular mound. In fact, this fella here, Darrell Duppa, in 1867, he was sitting on top of the pyramid having a picnic, and he named the settlement of Phoenix. He gave the settlement of Phoenix its name at this point. And I talk about this in my book, Eye of the Phoenix, which Bruce mentioned earlier. The Masonic connection to the city of Phoenix. Darrell Duppa was a Freemason. He's buried in the Freemason section of the cemetery, Pioneer Cemetery. But he named it after this mythical bird, the phoenix. Here's another Masonic connection, briefly. George Hunt, he was the first Arizona governor. He's buried in this Egyptian-style pyramid, white tile pyramid. Again, talking about the platform mound, here's the type of structure that was built on top of these Hoboken platform mounds. And these were basically for the elite class. Interestingly enough, this number 33 degrees latitude is very important. Phoenix is located on it. It's a sacred Masonic number. The highest degree you can attain is 33 degrees. Also, a couple other mounds that are very sort of similar. The Winterview Mounds and the Moundville, Alabama, in Mississippi and Alabama, there are these mounds, both located at 33 degrees north latitude. And they were constructed, or at least, their ending culture date was for 1450 in both cases, which is the same as a Hohokam. So they were doing the same thing at about the same time, building these platform mounds. So you got to wonder if all this was connected, all this activity of these mound building in the southeast and the southwest. Okay. Again, here's the main Orion zone correlation. Let me talk a little. This is why I did this. This place right up here, right here. Barely on the thing. It's Chaco Canyon, which is one of the major ruin sites in the southwest. Corresponds to the star Sirius in this whole template. Okay. It's the largest ruin site in the southwest. Pueblo Bonito had about 800 rooms. A huge site, and there were other pueblos in this canyon. And I hope they call this the star Sirius Honatsona, which means sucks from the belly, which indicates a mammal, not necessarily a dog, but some sort of mammal. And it corresponds to Sirius, the dog star. Nice window work, I'm sorry. They could orient this to the North Star. Here's Polaris right here. And this kiva, this great kiva in Pueblo Bonito is exactly oriented to the North Star. So they were a highly sophisticated culture that could do this architectural work. Also, they had platform mounds. There's a couple mounds in front of Pueblo Bonito. Here's a great kiva, a T-shaped doorway coming down, and you could come up from the other side and come up to the center through here. Okay, the Chichimet people, who gradually migrated down from the north into Mexico. They became the Aztecs. Okay, But the Chichimecs were the barbarians in the north. They're literally the people of the dog. That's what Chichimec means. And they buried these dogs as kind of an escort to the afterlife, but they were naturally mummified. And they've been found all over Arizona and New Mexico, these mummified dogs. So the largest Pueblo group in the southwest corresponds to Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens. Maybe that's a coincidence, I don't know. Here's a Google Earth shot of Chaco Canyon. Here's a winter solstice sunrise line, so the whole complex is laid out astronomically here. So if you stood here at Penasco Blanco, you could see the winter solstice sunrise over Una Vida, another ruined site a few miles down the canyon. Here's a gold mean spiral. Here's the overall Canis Major correlation with Sirius right here at Chaco Canyon. So you might get a sense of the whole dog being, you know, of course, reversed here. Here's the head of the dog. So what is the purpose of this mirroring of earth and sky? Why did they do this? Maybe they wanted to reflect this beautiful sacred geometry. This is kind of by the mesa area, the Hopi Mesas, this red dot here. You can see it, another view of it in the Solomon Seal. Of course, this was also done in Egypt. You had Abydos, Temple of Abydos, dedicated to Osiris, the Osirion. One anagram of Osirion is Orion. Why did the Hopi do that? Why did they build this template on the Arizona desert? Why did they focus on particular stars? I think they did because you see here, the left arm of Orion reaches over the Grand Canyon. This is a star called Pi 3 Orionis, and it corresponds to Osiris Temple. Okay, here's Osiris Temple right here, inside the Grand Canyon. It's somewhere back here, I think. That's me standing in front of Grand Canyon. Here's Upaki going to the northwest. This way, here's Osiris Temple. Here's the rim of the canyon. Here's the little Colorado River here, and a place called the Sipapuni, which I'll talk about. Pi 3 Orionis again right here. Why is Pi 3 Orionis important? It's only 26 light years away. The belt star, the middle belt star, is about 1,500 light years away. It's listed in the SETI star catalog. It's among Project Phoenix's best and brightest candidates for having exoplanets and ET life. It's number 7 on NASA's top 10 target stars for a terrestrial planet finder telescope, which unfortunately was not launched because of budgetary concerns. Perhaps the Hopi believed that their star ancestors came from Pi 3 right there, and that's why they wanted to point it to Osiris Temple. There's another star that's really important. It's called Pi 5 Orionis, and it corresponds to the Sipapuni. And here, right here. The Sipapuni, here's an overhead view of it. It's on the north bank of the Colorado River. It's a natural geological feature, and it's the most important spot in all of Hopi cosmology. The most important area is right there, because the Hopi believed that they came up from the previous third world into the current fourth world. Okay? They emerged out of the earth through a hollow reed and came up to the fourth world and began to populate the Colorado Plateau and Arizona. Okay? That's where they came from. It's a natural limestone feature along this river. Here's a pi 5 right here. Corresponds to that. And astronomers don't know what to make of this particular star, pi 5, because it's a binary star. Okay. Here's a close-up of this dome-shaped object that the Hopi came out of. And by the way, it also looks very much like one of the symbols of Dan Brown's book, the circumpunct, the lost symbol, in the book The Lost Symbol. He talks a lot about this circumpunct symbol. And that's a natural formation of the circumpunct right there, that the Hopi really think is important. Now this pi 5 Orionis, that's what a normal binary star looks like, because the gravity pulls on each other like this. The two stars kind of look like that. And the curve is irregular. Okay? The sine wave is irregular. But in pi 5, this is what the sine wave looks like. Okay? It's a perfectly regular curve. Okay? It might be a sign, no pun intended, of higher intelligence. And this is not so far-fetched, because there are astrophysicists named Paul LaViolette states that advanced civilizations can manipulate star systems for certain purposes. Like LaViolette believes that the Crab Nebula pulsar was kind of a modulation to warn us of a galactic superwave that's impending on our civilization. So, these advanced civilizations, Michio says the same thing, that they can manipulate whole star systems for their own purposes. Okay, here's again Orion and the way that the sun sets from the third mesa. Okay, here's Osiris temple right here. Orion sets into the Grand Canyon. Here's due west. Here's Taurus, and Orion. If you study the constellations, you know that Orion disappears for a number of days during the year. It can't be seen. It disappears in the west, and then around April or so, and it comes up in the east around July. It's about a 70-year period. Okay. I'm sorry, 70-day period. Okay. That it goes into the underworld, metaphorically. Okay, coming up through the giant reed, which I talked about, the Sipapuni, or Pi 5, the Hopi saw a certain creature named Masao, which I mentioned earlier. The Hopi word for Milky Way is Samwuka, literally big weed, a big reed. And it might be some sort of wormhole. Here's the creature that the Hopi met. The first creature the Hopi met coming up out of the earth. Here's Kachina dolls to represent the same creature. Masai was the Hopi god of death, the underworld, this earth plane, fire. So he's a pretty spooky looking character. Strange enough, the root of Masao, which is M-A-S, literally means gray in the Hopi language. So, if you were a MUFON group, I'd come out and say, this is an extraterrestrial gray. But of course, I guess you can draw your own conclusions about, why the Hopi thought this god was so important and named the god Masao, whose name means gray. And of course, it looks quite a bit like the traditional view of Orion here, a club in both cases. Here's a Kachina doll. The name Masao is similar to the name Messiah, which means anointed one. That's another thing to consider. He's the only nocturnal Hopi god. The Egyptian word mas means to slay or to kill. So there are these correlations between Egypt and Hopi. A friend of mine did this piece of artwork about depicting Masao. Okay, the Sipapuni, there's on the north bank of the Colorado, a little Colorado River. There's some other creatures that the Hopi talk about, the ant people, the Anusinom. Here's a petroglyph I found near Homology State Park. This is nearby, I just superimposed it. Now, the Hopi have a legend of surviving two different cataclysms, world cataclysms. And in order to survive the destruction of the first world by fire and the second world by ice, they were led by a certain star until they came to this god, the sky god. Okay? And the sky god, Sotuknang, took them, the Hopi people, to the ant people. Okay? Here's another mask of the sky god. And the ant people took them down into caverns in the Grand Canyon, and they survived the destruction by fire, probably a comet, because the scientists believe that in 10,900 BC, a huge comet hit North America, and there were a bunch of nanodiamonds created from this impact. Okay? The second world by ice, some kind of pole shift, perhaps in maybe 9,700 BC, when the Earth suddenly, very quickly, like Frank Joseph said this morning, very quickly changed from a warm climate to a cold climate. A pole shift could do this. And an almost instantaneous ice age. They call it the Big Freeze, at the Younger Dryas in 9700 BC. And the Hopi were saved by these ant people. Who are the ant people? What are these things? Okay. Let's go through a few words that kind of point to this. In the Bible, the Nephilim are the giants of the earth. Ancient Hebrews, Arabians, and Syrians all refer to Orion as the giant. The Sumerian term NFL, not the football league, but Nephilim, means those who came from heaven to earth. But the Aramaic word Nephilia is the name for Orion. And the Hebrew word Nemelim means ants. And it's interesting to find out that the Indo-European word, which Stephen doesn't think really exists, the Indo-European language, but if you look up in the Indo-European dictionary, the word Moruai, which means, literally means ant, okay? And it refers to the constellation Orion. So all these, it's a nexus of words coming together to connect the ant with Orion. The Hopi word Anu means ant, and the Hopi word Naki means friend, ant friend. So they were beneficent creatures that helped the Hopi survive. The Anunnaki. Okay, this is kind of a interesting parallel between the pharaoh ant and this pharaoh Akhenaten. Notice the similarity between these two photos. The spindly arms in Akhenaten, the elongated heads, the elongated skulls, you can see that here. The belly looks very much the same. Even the artist, in this particular rendition of Akhenaten drew this kind of pointed thing here, which looks like the abdomen of this particular ant. So perhaps Akhenaten himself was considered an ant person. There are a number of similarities. I think I'm running out of time, and I don't want to push this because you're ready for lunch. So I think I'll skip over that. Skip this. The Orion is a key to both ancient Egypt and the Hopi. You see, Sediment's tomb has this depiction here. The Milky Way arches over, just like the sky god, the sky god Nut, and Geb is lying on the ground. The Mother Sky arches over Father Earth, just like the heavens. Okay. And this is in the Great Pyramid. I superimposed the Great Pyramid. It's kind of like its member is located in the King's Chamber right here. I just threw that in there to try to spice things up. I make firm the staff of Orion. Okay. The Egyptians used tools to create the Great Pyramid, the Bay and Merkhet. The Hopi also used tools, perhaps to construct this template on the Arizona desert. This is called the Hopi Manco. It's very similar to this artifact found in the north shaft of the Queen's Chamber, called the Peshin Kef. Okay. Morphologically, they're very similar, and it also relates to the constellation Taurus. And the Maya also had these tools to work with. The Aztecs also used cross sticks like this for celestial alignments and to align their pyramids. Okay, this is an interesting little story about the lost city of the dead in Grand Canyon. It's also called Kincaid's Cave. There's an article appeared in April 5th, 1909 in the Arizona Gazette. It's a daily, not a weekly paper, so it's not an April Fool's joke. Okay. And they found some amazing artifacts. Now this person, G.E. Kincaid, took a boat down from Green River, Wyoming, sailed down the Colorado River into Marble Canyon, which is part of the Grand Canyon, and he spotted a cave on the side of the wall, on this side of the wall. Okay, and it was about 2,000 feet above the river and about 1,500 feet below the rim of the canyon. So it's way up there. And the article said he reached this place with great difficulty. Here's John Wesley Powell's drawing of an earlier trip. This was made, Kincaid started out in October of 1908. Okay. The article appeared in April of 1909. What Kincaid found, once he entered this, he made it up with great difficulty to the entrance of this cave, which was about 12 feet wide, rectangular, okay? And he went into horizontally into this cave, hundreds of feet into the cave in an artificially carved passageway. What he found, okay, at about 60 feet, he found two side passageways. He found oval-shaped doors and ventilation shafts. He found a huge chamber with other passageways going off like spokes on a wheel. He found out-of-place artifacts, parts. He found vases, urns, copper and gold cups, copper weapons, slag, which meant there was some kind of smelting going on. He found enamel pottery. He found stone tablets with hieroglyphs. A hall hundreds of feet long with a carved marble statue of a Buddha in a lotus posture. He also found a crypt with male mummies with their weapons. And incredibly, the article said that there were several hundred rooms in this one complex, and it could hold up to 50,000 people. Maybe that's just an exaggeration, but it was a mammoth complex in the Grand Canyon. Here's a artist's rendition of the Buddha statue he found. Oh, yes, in Ancient American Magazine, Wayne May's magazine, author Frank Joseph, whom you heard this morning, thought that this, instead of Buddha, it might have been the Egyptian dwarf deity Bes, okay, with the bowed legs and holding two lotuses. Okay. Here's another artist's rendition of the crypts with the mummies. Huge complex. Now the interesting thing about this is, a guy named Charles Walcott was the secretary of the Smithsonian at the time. So he would have received all the artifacts from this expedition. He was well connected in Washington. He knew Calvin Coolidge, Woodrow Wilson, Andrew Carnegie. He was an influential guy in Washington and as the director of the Smithsonian. However, in his youth, some 20 years earlier, he had spent the winter alone in Grand Canyon. His assistants got freaked out and left the canyon, and he was all by himself in Grand Canyon. And he was actually in the very spot where Kincaid made this discovery. The Kincaid discovery was right here in this little V. Okay, here's the Little Colorado River with the Sipapuni, which I showed you earlier, be right about there. But I think that he might have either seen the entrance way up on the cliffside and made a mental note of it. I'd try to check that. Or he actually made it into the cave and he was silent about it. But he spent the whole winter in this very area where these artifacts supposedly were found. Here he is again at the Grand Canyon, Walcott. I took an expedition with a number of people, about a dozen people, last May, to this particular area to try to do some research on this. It's called the Confluence because the two rivers flow together, the Colorado and the Little Colorado. Here I am on the left, and here's David Childress. He's a brave guy. I don't know how he could stand on the edge like that. Here's where we were, and here's where supposedly Kincaid's cave is, because the article said that it's 42 miles from the mouth of Crystal Rapids here, upriver, okay, and you come to this spot here. So it's in this little slot where Kincaid's cave is. Interesting that Duppa Butte, which the guy Daryl Duppa I talked about earlier, he has a butte named after him in Grand Canyon too. Oh, the megaliths. We found some megaliths right here. So there's a line between Osiris Temple, which I mentioned earlier, all the way to these megaliths. And I don't know what to make of these megaliths. There was a circle 70 feet long and 50 feet wide, multi-ton blocks, huge blocks, and we don't really know what the, here's David inspecting the megaliths. Why would they do this? Someone said that it was a sheep corral, but really, if you want to keep sheep. They might keep sheep in the corral, but the coyotes would certainly be able to jump over this thing. Here's Chris O'Brien doing some videography of these massive stone blocks in the middle of nowhere. No explanation for this. Here's a Zuni elder, Clifford Mahudi, inspecting a smaller circle we found adjacent to this larger circle. So it's just a kind of a mysterious thing. Here's Marble Canyon looking upstream, kind of by where the cave should be located, somewhere in this area, right here. But it's so treacherous that you really, you might lose your life either rappelling down this way or trying to go up the river this way, from the river this way. And one of the reasons why I want to go there, I found this on Google Earth, and you look closely, these are tire tracks, but why would you make these tire tracks in a perfect rectangle right next to Marble Canyon? And it looks like some kind of parallel lines going this way and parallel lines going this way. It's just a mystery that needs some more explanation, and we're going to mount another expedition as soon as we can to try to explore this whole area in depth. Okay, this is the overall pattern of the Earth, of the constellations on the Earth. It seems like you guys are getting hungry. I can hear rumbling in your stomachs. Not too much longer. You know, the Hopi, again, have these weird creatures, the Kachinas, star messengers, spirit messengers. Here's the Orion belt, the Orion's belt on top there. There's a bowl with Orion's belt here, a ceramic bowl. Here's a drawing of Sohu Kachina. Oh, by the way, Sohu means star in Hopi, and Sahu in Egyptian means the stars of Orion. So another linguistic link between the Hopi culture and the ancient Egyptian culture. Again, the three-star motif and some petroglyphs. I think this is a really neat petroglyph of a human face with bird, tail, and claws, and a four-pointed star. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the Hopi are still performing these ceremonies. In fact, the Puamu ceremony, which this depicts, commemorates the time when the ant people brought the Hopi down into those caverns to survive. And it's called the bean dance. So the Hopi sprout beans in the kivas to remember a time when the ant people saved their culture. Okay, the overall configuration. There is a grand celestial design in the desert southwest where long ago a sky pattern similar to Egypt's Orion was consciously brought down to Earth. Here's a golden mean spiral coming off from that Sipapuni, and it kind of unites all these constellations here. Here's another golden mean spiral coming from the Orion Nebula, which they found a black hole recently in the Orion Nebula. And the ancients believed that there was a whirlpool in the sky near the star Rigel. Why was there a whirlpool in the sky? The Hopi made many spiral petroglyphs. Here are a couple examples. They depicted bowls with the spiral motif. How did they know about that? Of course, the big picture, our spiral galaxy, you know, at least 100 billion stars. And at least 100 billion galaxies, that's a really big picture. But the big secret is, did the lady of Elche in Spain, Iberian, this culture, did she get it from her or did she get it from her? But the pressing question I know you want to know the answer to is, did Princess Leia get her hairdo from this hokey maiden? Okay, thank you very much. I've got 4 books for sale on the desk there.